So as supply chain continue to evolve, one of the greatest challenges facing organization is not just technology or infrastructure, but people. Building a strong pipeline of skilled professionals and developing the next generation of leaders is essential to creating resilient, innovative, and sustainable supply chain. So today's discussion brings together experienced experts who will share practical insights, personal experiences, and strategies to help prepare the next workforce for the future. Before we begin, I would like to ask everyone to mute their mics if they are not talking, and you ask your questions at the end of the webinar, please. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our host for today's webinar. Our host for today's webinar is Margaret Ngari. Madam Margaret Ngari is a distinguished supply chain executive, leadership coach, and thought leader with over 17 years of experience across government, manufacturing, FMCG, financial services, and international development sector. She currently serves as Regional Supply Chain Director for East Africa at World Vision International, where she oversees a supply chain portfolio across 9 countries. Please, I need to see your accolades in the comments. I need to see your reactions, please. Margaret brings a practical and forward-looking perspective on how global dynamics shape local and regional supply chains. She has led complex transformations initiatives, including ERP implementation, supplier network optimization, and resilience building strategies in high-risk and rapidly evolving environments. Margaret is an executive leadership, SME, and career development coach, where she empowers leaders and organizations to navigate change, strengthen leadership capacity, and unlock sustainable growth. On this note, I would like to let you all know that she is widely respected for her strategic mindset, authentic leadership style, and commitment to excellence, and continues to influence the future of supply chain and leadership and development across Africa and beyond. So here is our host, Margaret Ngari. Thank you, and I will hand over the floor for Margaret Ngari to continue the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the warm introduction and also for the accolades from the team that has joined, our guests, our speakers. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you are joining us from. I know we're joining from all over Africa, so just like to salute all the participants and the speakers. So it's my pleasure and introduction to introduce the speakers. We have 3 speakers today who will be leading us in terms of building the supply chain pipeline. One of the issues that I've seen in my career in supply chain is that building talent never stops in terms of your skills, careers, and what is expected for you for current supply chain and also the future supply chain that is coming, whereby we are seeing a lot of changes in the supply chain. So I'll introduce the speaker. The first speaker that I'll introduce is Professor Jan Meyer, who's a professor and independent consultant, contractor and consultant. He looks into supply chain management, integrated logistics management, project management, and strategic management. So he's a professor and a past deputy director of the NWU Business School, Northwest University, whereby he was responsible for coordinating, teaching, and learning for the school across the 3 sites of delivery. He completed his South African Air Force career at having worked for 21 years as the logistics coordinator, AFB start corp with the rank of colonel. He later joined Excel IT as a project manager on the logistics on a logistics project for a period of 7 years, moving on to academia as a senior lecturer at Monsha, South Africa, School of IT, Project and Supply Chain Management. After moving to Mill Park Business School and the IIE, finally taking up the position at Northwest University, GSB and GL in 2012. He was the acting director of the GSB and GL until the unitary NW Business School came about in 2018 and appointed the deputy director to the newly established NWU Business School in April 2018. Professor Maya was also involved in the National Treasury Workshop on supply chain management between 2015 to 2017. He also serves as a program and site evaluator to the CHE for accreditation purposes. He holds a PhD from the University of Pretoria, Masters in Business Leadership from UNISA, Certificate in Logistics Management from the University of Pretoria, and a bachelor's degree in political science. He also completed the graduate certificate in higher education at Monash, Melbourne, at Monash, Melbourne. He completed various research and supervision courses during his tenure at Monash. His research interests include the project management, integrated logistics, supply chain management. Other fields of interest center on ICT 4D, information knowledge management, e-governance, and e-government, as well as issues in the public sector. Prof has published in peer-reviewed journals in the above fields. Prof is also known on the editorial committee of accredited journals and conference with ties to both logistics and supply chain management. His keen interest in the supply chain is founded in his years of integrated logistics management. So let's please applaud Prof as he prepares to speak to us. The second speaker will be Nyakanzei Luthuli. I hope I've not massacred your name with my East African tongue, who is a team lead for group procurement at Glencore Ferranois Division as a senior leader with over 20 years of experience in supply chain management across services, banking, power generation, and mining. Her expertise spans procure-to-pay transformation, procurement automation, master data governance, contract lifecycle management, spend analytics, compliance monitoring, workflow digitalization, and process standardization. She's a strong advocate for leveraging digital tools, analytic and artificial intelligence, and automation to create agile, resilient, and future-ready supply chains that deliver strategic value beyond cost savings. She has successfully led large-scale procurement modernization initiatives, including the implementation and optimization of SAP and Coupa, enabling organizations to transition from traditional procurement models to data-driven, digital-enabled procurement functions. Her influence extends beyond corporate leadership. She serves on the Procurement Policy Committee of the Minerals Council.
Oh, you're muted, Madam Margaret. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yes. Yeah, you can continue now.
Okay, her influence extends beyond corporate leadership. She serves on the Procurement Policy Committee of the Minerals Council in South Africa, shaping industry transformation and sustainable development, and chairs quality assurance at an advanced institute of supply chain research, ensuring professional education and certification remain relevant to evolving industry needs. A passionate advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion, she's committed to building sustainable talent pipelines and bridging academia with work realities. In 2024, Nyakanzei was named among the Women in Mining UK Global 100 Inspirational Women in Mining, a prestigious international recognition celebrating women who are shaping the future of global mining industry. Let's applaud her for that. And having completed a Master of Commerce in Business Management, she combines academic insights with extensive industry experience. An engaging speaker facilitator, Nyakanzei regularly shares expertise on procurement, leadership, sustainable sourcing, supplier development, mining charter compliance, and BBEE transformation and the future of supply chain management. So let's give it up for Madam. Then our third speaker will be Mr. Ademola Bello. He's a seasoned supply chain executive and transformational leader with over 29 years of experience spanning supply chain management, sales operation, administration, and service center management. Throughout his distinguished career, he has built extensive expertise across procurement and strategic sourcing, logistic, inventory management, warehousing, distribution, and business process engineering. Recognized for his strategic leadership and results-driven approach, Ademola has successfully led organization transformation initiatives, optimized supply chain operations, and driven operation excellence across diverse sectors. His core competencies include change management, emotional intelligence, financial accountability, business process systems, management, humanitarian logistics, and cross-functional team leadership. His broad industry experience encompasses fast-moving consumer goods, manufacturing, international trade, and the humanitarian and non-governmental organization sector, enabling him to bring a unique global perspective to supply chain strategy, resilience, and sustainable business growth. So we have quite a great panel that will present for us in the next sessions of this webinar. So looking forward to learning, and you can also note down your questions. We'll be getting questions at the end of this session. So thank you, and over back to you.
Thank you very much, Margaret, for this beautiful presentation, an introduction of our speakers. So I'll give the floor now to Professor Mayer. Professor Mayer, please.
There, I think we are ready to go, and if everybody is happy, we can continue.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Menagari. Appreciated. Right, my section is the very first one to lay the foundation, essentially, on the future for supply chain management, logistics talent. And this is to enhance the overall talent that we would require for the future and in the future. Let's first understand this playing field, and for this to be understood, one has to look, and it was also stated to this effect, that it is more than just looking at the long-term career growth, but also looking at the immediate and the intermediate abilities. Therefore, training and skilling needs to be incorporated in this. For the future of supply chain management, we would need to encourage all three stages of this. Existing domains are focused on the elements of the supply chain. We know that it is both formal and informal. There are specific developmental environments that focus on this, both in universities, colleges, in-house and all the rest, and they focus on purchasing, procurement, warehouse management, inventory management, distribution, and then you get qualifications like transport, economics, and the like of that. But we also need to bring everything of supply chain into the fourth and fifth industrial revolution space, and that becomes important for the future. If we consider the current focus of supply chain, it is pretty much focused on and in accordance with Porter's model. with its 4 primary activities, to wit, inbound logistics, operations, outbound logistics, sales, marketing, and support activities that go with it. And these are grouped into 4 main events: supply, operations, logistics, and then the integration of these. Where supply would be supply-based reduction, supply alliances, likes of that, operation, demand management, collaborative planning, and so forth. Logistics would be logistics management, and this is where the problem arises. It is defined as logistics management, transportation, distribution, and then integration, which looks at barriers, risk management, performance measures, and so forth. In this operations where we look at logistics, we do not fully address the actions and activities. And this is important for future supply chain facilitating and facilitators. To require full operational supply chain, we will need to start unpacking the integrated logistics support. Not logistics as we understand it now with focus on transportation and distribution alone. We've got to start expanding this and looking at Blanchard, in this case, looking at operational logistics and engineering logistics as 2 major components. And we'll have to take this forward in our issue of supply chain management. Our operational logistics focus on the support and the systems that are needed to support it, looking at it from a holistic point of view, a system support point of view. And the engineering logistics, we don't talk the engineering issues per se, but we look at the logistics administrative type effect of engineering and logistics, design, form, fit, and function activities that go with that. And then the whole of the existing education and training models should then start progressing into a 4th, 5th industry IR environment and move forward from the 3rd, which they're currently encased in, looking at digitization and the likes of that. So we'll have to move forward in terms of that whole process. The problem today is that in the 5th and 4th IR, certain requirements are set, and I see this in the field at this stage where platforms are more and more developed in the use and for the use of LLMs, AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, digital twins, and machine learning and the likes of that. But we don't see that in our training. So this is something that we would need to evolve in and towards as well. We've got to stick to process improvement and leading out of processes, which is pretty much the 4th Industrial Revolution construct. That is the focus of that era. 5th is now moving into all these new aspects where you have real-time distribution, real-time data exchange, and the facilitation of maintenance and engineering happening virtually in the field, thousands of kilometers apart, facilitated by the ICT. Our supply chain is pretty much, therefore, life cycle support effective driven. In other words, the life cycle support efficiency is very important in this whole process because this relates to sustainability and dependability of your product, of your system that you have in the field that need to be supported. And in terms of life cycle effectiveness and efficiency, one needs to integrate your operational and engineering logistics. And this is what I said. When we say logistics in the old Porter model, we don't really look at the fine print, which is the operational engineering and logistics, the efficiency of that. But it's got to be measured against the cost management parameters. So fundamentally, the talent we need to develop would be that we start looking at an unpacked operational logistics environment and engineering environment integrated to keep the field of SCM at the foreground. And we've got to start moving into that proposition. Now, this is going to be applicable to all forms, talent, skills, training, in the full life cycle of and in the development. The talent for the future, therefore, in the future must include criteria that's going to focus on input to design and maintenance of the product. So it's not going to be a one-way, it's going to be an integrated approach. with support equipment as well. So we're not only talking of the product we manufacture, we're talking about the equipment around it that we manufacture with or that we maintain with, making it a fully integrated system support or product support approach that we would then follow, the holistic view. And then have the ability to execute continuous evaluation. Now, this becomes very important for continuous improvement, not only of your systems, fourth IR orientation, but in the fifth industrial revolution, where we start moving much more into continuous improvement of the product and system at lower cost. So your engineering performance parameters need to start improving in this line and this way of thinking. And your design configuration moves beyond that, with continuous improvement obviously being the mainstay that we have to move forward with. The determination of maintenance resources. Currently, the maintenance maturity models will start moving beyond that. Now, the maintenance maturity models that we're looking at are, for instance, the prescriptive, predictive, preventative, and reactive type of models that's currently on the table. Some also refer to the reliability-centered maintenance and condition-based maintenance. But these are absolutely required within our total development process, where we want to move towards prescriptive maintenance. Now, the prescriptive maintenance takes us out of the fourth into the fifth IR space. Now, for this, the training, skilling, and the whole talent development will have to become a lot more ICT orientated in the process. Similar to your motor car. Motor car from 1980 versus a motor car from 2024 differs 180 degrees, because in the old days you had standard mechanical stuff which just about anybody could fix. Today you need let's say a rocket engineer to fix something. But anyway, there's a huge difference, and we have to start equipping the people to be able to facilitate this new supply chain. We've got to develop our talent to focus on dependability and supportability in the life cycle. We must not only look at a product, but we must consider the life cycle, consider the advanced software engineering to enhance the next generation of the supply chain, where we bring availability up and cost down. And that becomes very important. We've got to consider our process group application. Now, that's an interesting aspect, because that's bringing project management into this as well. We look at initiate, plan, execute, monitor, control, and close out. But the nice part of that is that the monitor and controlling actually allows you to do a lot more in your supply chain, and training and skilling people in this domain would only enhance it. A quick view of the Blanchard perspective of the ILSM, which is how logistics should start looking. When we consider, for instance, material supply support, that is spares, inventory, that is a lot more than just inventory management. It is requirements management, which is commonly just referred to as demand management, but actually houses in there. It also gives you a lot of specifications. So material support gives you a much broader description. Future logisticians, future supply chain managers would be more focused on this. Currently, this is already happening in the field where certain platforms are deployed, where this is now happening, where real-time support, both engineering and operational support is given. There is data exchange, and that repairs are done in the field with digital twins. All of this basically by unpacking logistics into this field of the logistic elements. But it's important to understand the 12 logistic elements. In the proposal there, looking at the ILS integration, new skills and new training needs to be developed. ILS elements do not function in isolation. Those 12 elements are actually totally integrated. From the engineering side, we seldom see it, but it's a fact. The LSAP, the Log Support Analysis Plan, actually gives rise to your maintenance manuals. to your specification for specific spares. And very few people see that because it's usually done in the background, back office, or it is outsourced. But it is pretty much the basis for it. The config management, configuration management runs on that as well. So we've got to move our maintenance as well from predictive to prescriptive maintenance. In the past, we used to do a reactive or run to failure. Then we progressed into preventative, where we had scheduled maintenance. And then predictive, where we said, well, we've got a pretty good idea as to what's going to happen with a product, when it's going to fail. We had a very good idea. But we've got to move to the prescriptive maintenance, which at this stage not only tells us when it's going to fail, but what will you require, what it is that you're going to need to fix, and when it fails, when it will fail, how to fix it, the option that you have with that. And there's a specific test that you can do with that and to determine that. So in my way of thinking, talent for the future must be able to understand the engineering logistics influence on the operational logistics through the LSAP, the log support analysis plan, with specific performance figures. Now, as you see there, I've got the FMECAs and the FROCAs on there, which in all is the fault, failure reporting analysis, and the failure mode effects and criticality analysis, which affect the engineering logistics. And in the process of that analysis, these determine certain figures in terms of your mean time to repair, which must come down, your mean time between failures, which must come up, and your mean time between servicings, which should also be extended. And you see this a lot within it. It depends, obviously, on use. And all of this is very much cost reduction related, or cost control related, at least. Then if you can't reduce the cost, at least manage it so that it doesn't go in excessive mode. Operational logistics need to ultimately look at RAM, the reliability and availability going up, and maintainability decreasing, which is one of the cost drivers. With the ultimate improved usage of the ICT, we would then in future see more use of LLMs, AI, ML, machine learning, and digital twins and the likes of that, and some more advanced software engineering and skilled staffing required on all accounts and facilities. The one thing that we did find also, and is the fact that in the ERP environment this time, the very good ERPs are very good, but they're layered and they are time consuming to customize. So we would probably see a lot more cloud-based and specifically designed products for the future. And off the shelf would probably, it'd still be there, but it'll then have to be integrated at a lower level in terms of the design. Materials management must need or will need a complete revamp. Your warehouse management systems and inventory management systems and other external variables will need to be reconsidered. Your demand management will be reconsidered in terms of REMS, requirements management, all this within the materials management, which then ultimately, this is just to revert back to those 12 log elements to show how they totally integrate with each other. The engineering integrate, the ops log integrate, and the 6 on each side integrate as well to the ILSM, which should function in the supply chain. There we have that. Now, the supply chain, and that's Porter's proposition of it, which we attach ourselves to. The 12 log elements reside within inbound logistics, reside within operations, reside within outbound logistics and marketing, sales, and so on. And within each of those activities, the 12 log elements also relate to each other when they integrate with the following activity. For instance, inbound's 12 log elements will talk to the operations 12 log elements. We'll talk to the outbound logistics 12 log elements, because warehousing could be a common item. Your procurement is initiated through ops to materials management in inbound logistics, which has to place the demands and obtain it, acquisition and so forth, and then take it further. But that's just the idea in the overarching business thing. In summary then, if we look at the future for supply chain management talent, it lies in the acceptance of the integration of the ILSM in the existing supply chain mold. With ICT and skills development, which must center around the fifth industrial revolution, and developments must go beyond the existing ERP models. Digital twins, LLMs, large language models, machine learning, AR, VR, dynamics, all these must be real time, and data must be exchanged on an agile method. As I said before, currently it is already being done that equipment is being monitored real time by the original equipment manufacturer, who then dictates to the user what should happen within a particular point in time, which is prescriptive maintenance. So it is already in the field. Can't give more detail than that, but it is happening as we are going at this time. Some of the applications that ought to be taught in the near future would probably center around the Bayesian network, a network system or approach, because this is a good tool to facilitate prescriptive maintenance because of its ability to do cause and effect. So maintenance, the related outcomes of materials management and the likes of that would all become something that needs to be revised in our new talent approach and be presented and chased. So even in the formal and informal space, this is something that should be in this application. And I did focus primarily on maintenance and manufacturing in this case. The same would be applicable to service industries as well. But in all, irrespective of what you do, continuous would need to form a substantial part of the curriculum as well. And innovation and continuous improvement should be promoted to the maximum. For this couple of minutes. Okay, where's our chat?
Thank you so much, Prof, for your presentation. Some really good insights. I think the questions, we'll get the questions at the end of the 3 presentations. So I'll call upon the second presenter to just come on board and present and continue the presentations. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I hope you can all see my screen.
Yes, please. We can see your screen.
Today, I'm going to be sharing a topic that is very close to my heart, which is the development of young professionals in terms of the field of supply chain. How do we prepare industry-ready procurement and supply chain professionals in this day and age where we heard Prof talking about we're now heading towards the 5th industrial revolution, but yet we are still teaching students. So what I'll cover today is a topic to say what it is that students need to do to prepare in terms of bridging the gap, bridging the employers' expectations and readiness. How do we collaborate with universities as industries? And what is work integrated learning? And why is it important as well while we develop youngsters as they enter the world of the workplace? We need to go back and actually understand the gap in terms of readiness for our graduates. Graduates often have a strong theoretical background, but yet they struggle to apply what they've learned in theory versus to what actually happens in the real world of business, which they're not always exposed to. Factors behind the gap can be also linked back to the curriculum that we actually expose students to. I mean, the curriculum is moving slower than how procurement itself is advancing. And many procurement supply chain graduates leave with a theoretical knowledge. However, when they enter the workplace has already moved and evolved. Looking at the evolving business technologies and the skills beyond just theory and the technical knowledge which is required in terms of the workplace. Just to give you a few stats as well of if you look at the unemployed statistics in Africa. If you look at the top 10 countries based on the World Bank, where we're looking at where there's a high level of unemployment. Now, we are talking about unemployment in general amongst young people between the ages of 15 to 24. We have, for example, in countries like Djibouti, we are sitting at 76%. South Africa, we are sitting at 59%. Eswatini, 54%, Libya, 50%, and so forth. But this is just looking at unemployment in general. And then when we dive deeper to say, how many of our graduates are actually struggling to find employment? Just as an example, we look at Cameroon, where 23% of young graduates struggle to secure formal employment. In South Africa, the statistics are between 8 to 10%. And in Tunisia, between 25 to 30%. Other countries as well that are observing very high levels of students or graduates struggling to find employment can be seen in Egypt, Algeria, Libya, and Nigeria. Which means you as a graduate, as you graduate, you are not only competing with those that have studied, but you are also competing with those that have not studied and yet are looking for opportunities for employment. So it is very important as well that when we look at why graduates struggle, we do not just only focus on when they struggle when they get into the workplace, but how do they struggle as well as they want to enter the workplace environment. So as you saw the statistics that I showed, we have a high supply versus demand. Graduates have increased rapidly, but the formal job creation is not keeping up to the pace. Job markets rewards applied and demonstrated expertise in terms of learning. Some of the broader economic challenges that we face is that there's low economic growth, limited industrialization, high informal employment reduces jobs opportunities for graduates. Graduates also now have to compete with experienced workers in terms of getting jobs in the marketplace because there are really no jobs available. One of the other things that also happened is the experience paradox. So when we talk about the experience paradox, that companies are now reducing their budgets, and what you'll find is that the cost of training becomes significant and people are not willing to train students from scratch. They're not willing to absorb graduates, some people that they're going to still need to train because that is a cost to a company. So when we look at that in terms of tight budgets, companies are now saying, I want people that are ready-made. But who is supposed to prepare these youngsters that are ready-made for the workplace? And you'll often see in most of the adverts that you see these days is that they want now 2 to 3 years employment for entry-level positions because they want somebody who's already come and trained in terms of the work experience. Another issue that we are also struggling with is university curriculum lag behind industry by years. So let's use an example. So currently you are now about to complete your degree, but yet the theories and the information that you're being taught today at varsity is based on information that is maybe 5 years behind. So the curriculum itself is slower to adapt in terms of the work space requirements. By the time you graduate, already industry is already 10 years ahead of you. I mean, you heard Prof is now talking about augmented reality, AI that is used in the environment, and yet you are still sitting with the curriculum that's still saying P2P, this is the process, but even the systems that they teach you have already long evolved. I mean, just recently we went from, they've now introduced S4HANA, whereas some of you maybe are still sitting with systems that are looking at SAP ECC6, when the business has also long evolved. Another thing as well that also when you struggle when you want to enter the workplace, I recently had my son who also graduated looking for employment. Now AI technology recruitment tools are being utilized to recruit and also to train young people. So he went through an interview process where he was called by an AI who said, good day, how are you? And from there on, he had 3 interviews with an AI system before he actually saw a physical person. But before even that happened as well, is that HR in companies is using application tracking systems like ATS to filter through CVs, almost often looking at specific keywords, which means that if your CV does not meet those specific keywords in terms of recruitment, you are missing a chance of being employed these days. Because not a human being is now looking at the CV, but they're putting your CVs through a computer and a machine that is filtering to see who meets the requirement in terms of the job. Another problem that we are also finding is the low awareness from our graduates in terms of the type of supply chain roles. Supply chain is evolving every day. What you know supply chain today may also change tomorrow. I mean, what I did when I started as a graduate has long evolved. I'm no longer doing what I did 20 years ago from the time I started. Then once you now employ these young graduates, they're now struggling now. Now it's now on the job challenges they now face, based on their limited practical experience. Graduates often lack the hands-on experience in supply negotiations, operational decision-making. You're now dealing with big budgets. You're dealing with big data, conducting spend analysis on data that you've never seen or been exposed to. And yet you need to apply all those practical skills with the knowledge that you've come through from university. Another thing as well, the technology you are not familiar with. There's insufficient knowledge on the ERP systems and the digital tools that are now utilized in terms of the workplace. When you talk of big data, you're using systems like SAP. These days, we've also implemented a system called Cooper within our workplace environment where I work. All these are systems that the youngsters are unfamiliar with as they enter the workplace. The other thing as well, you are posed with communication challenges. As you enter as a graduate in terms of the workplace, because you now have a degree, the assumption is you are able to negotiate, speak to multiple stakeholders, have cross-functional teams that you work with on a daily basis, because that is the job of a supply chain professional. But yet, our graduates are underdeveloped in terms of negotiation skills. They have not been exposed in engaging multiple stakeholders who are not always easy to deal with. And again, applying the theory to an environment that is highly ambiguous. You know, when you work in supply chain, you're continuously putting out fire. You cannot apply the theory practically because today, this is what's required, but tomorrow it's something else that is required. At university, you are dealing with an ideal work environment, but the real world is not ideal. There's a lot of challenges. The continuously changing. Today is this, something else is another problem. Because remember, as a supply chain professional, you're a problem solver. So these are often challenges that youngsters face when they enter the work environment. You lack strategic thinking, limited understanding of the commercial impact, how it affects procurement and supply chain decisions. These are things that often you can learn strategy in the university, but when it comes to applying, it becomes often difficult. Another issue that our youngsters also struggle with when they enter the workplace environment is professionalism. Some graduates have an excellent academic record, but yet they're not developed professionally. Socially as well, they are not engaged because somebody that is strong in focusing on books needs to be also exposed in other things in terms of interacting with people. Supply chain is about interaction, it's about dealing with people on a day-to-day basis. And if you are somebody that is not used to talking, presenting, there are certain behaviors that you need to work in terms of the workplace environment. I'm also going to use an example of something that happened to me just recently. So we have young graduates that come to our workplace as interns. Most of the time, they're inexperienced in terms of our professional etiquette. I think at the time that we interviewed this youngster, we spoke to it, and she wanted to understand what is the dress code, what is required. And I think ignorantly myself, I responded and said, no, we have a casual dress code. There is no expectations of you wearing a suit to work. But we are strict in terms of the time. Work starts at 7:30. I mean, 7:15, but I'm expecting first meetings usually start by 7:30. Day one, 7:30 comes, the youngster is not here. I automatically then continue with my meetings for the day. And then later on, I bump into a CFO, and CFO said, hey, is today bring your girl child to work, because I saw your daughter sitting there in your office. And I'm thinking, okay, I said, no, that must be the intern. And then he goes, hey, did you check a dress code? And I said, okay. And then I was a bit taken aback. As I arrive now into my office, I find the youngster sitting there. She says to me, hi, boss lady, you must be the boss lady. It's a pleasure to meet you, because last time I saw you, we were online. The youngster was dressed in a crop top, tights, and morning slippers. Well, what appeared to me as morning slippers, because then I said, but didn't I say it's casual wear? She says, yeah, you said casual wear. And I said, what are you wearing? This is casual wear. Remember, now I'm thinking casual, relaxed dress code, but these youngsters were Gen Z these days. Casual wear for them is dressed relaxed, coming in their slippers and coming to work. And those are the type of things that when you are not dealing with young people, you need to be clear and maybe demonstrate what it is, because they take everything literally when you say this is the dress code. And that was my first encounter dealing with a Gen Z. I mean, I live with Gen Zs, but in the workplace, I had different expectations. And these are the type of challenges that these youngsters face, to say you now need to accustom in terms of how you talk, how you handle yourself, and how you also talk in a professional manner. So what are employers' expectations when it comes to graduates coming to the work environment? Yes, we want strong foundation in terms of supply chain knowledge, understanding the end-to-end supply chain process, demand planning, inventory management, and so forth. We want youngsters, as well as they enter the workplace, to have a technical digital skills, advanced Excel. There is no way when you can work with the supply chain knowing basic Excel. It must be at an advanced level. So if it's not a skill that you are learning at university, let me tell you, if you're going to work with supply chain, you need to have an advanced knowledge of Excel, because you work with Excel spreadsheets all the time as a bare minimum, and it must be at an advanced level. I mean, when you talk to a youngster and say, please do a VLOOKUP for me, and then they look at you blank and you're thinking, we are not there to teach them on how to use the basic skills in terms of Excel. Yes, the ERP systems are there in terms of availability. Most of the time, we train them. So, but we prefer that they come having at least a knowledge on the ERP systems that we do. Data analytics, because we work with big data. I mean, Prof talk about AI, ML, and RPA, and also augmented reality. These are the type of things that we want these youngsters to come, already understanding that business has evolved. We talk about blockchain exposure to those type of environment. Analytical and problem solving. As a supply chain professional, your job is to solve problems, to analyze data, identify the root cause, do root cause analysis. If you cannot do that, then it becomes a problem. So those are the type of skills that we want them to be exposed to. Communication and collaboration. Continuously, you're going to work with teams. You're going to need to be able to talk. I mean, supply chain is about negotiating, talking, dealing with stakeholders. If you can't talk, then it's a problem. You must have a business acumen and be customer focused. Understand the goals of the business and how do they relate back to the job that you're doing. Because you do not work in isolation. We want them as well to have a good financial understanding. How do you interpret cash flow balancing of cost. How do you interpret budgets and how they relate back into in terms of the supply chain environment? You must be adaptable and be agile for learning. Learning does not stop when you graduate. It continues in terms of the work environment. So you need to be lean enough and be able to learn and continue, because this environment is evolving every day. As I said, what I did when I started from the time I graduated more than 20 years ago to what I do now, it's totally different. It's worlds apart. Attitude and work ethic. A positive attitude takes you a long way. The work environment is stressful. You're continuously under pressure, but you overcome if you have a positive attitude. You overcome as well if you take ownership, accountability in terms of your work. Nobody's there to spoon feed you when you come to the work environment. I always tell them that here we are dealing with people that need to work independently, people that need to be able to think on their feet. Gone are those days where when you come into supply chain that you're going to be able to be told, step 1, you do this, step 2. As a graduate, we're expecting you to be agile enough and to be adaptable and to be reliable and resilient to change. Real work exposure in terms of tools that you get. Expose yourself in terms of internships and projects in terms of the industry. Participate in those things, volunteer. We are now also moving over to sustainability. When you talk about supply chain, we talk from cradle to grave and beyond the grave, because there are now opportunities on how, once you have the end product, how do you look after the product and ensure that you absorb in terms of ESG, environment, social, and governance in terms of the products. From cradle to grave, to know that once a product has lived its end of lifetime, what it is that you do to it, either to recycle or reuse that product. Those are the type of things that we're wanting youngsters to be aware of and understand. Commitment to ethical practice, because you're going to deal with a lot of problems. Every time when they deal with, talk about in the news, talk about procurement, talk about supply chain, they're continuously talking about corruption. So you need to enter and have an ethical mindset. And those are the things that you can never teach anybody. Ethics is about you, about your conscious understanding and having a conscious as well to say, how do I conduct myself in an ethical manner? You can learn it from textbooks, but it's something that comes in that what is the right thing for me to do, and having that conscious. When we enter the workplace, we're looking for leadership potential. We want people to take initiative, lead tasks and lead small teams, and already do it in themselves. Because most of the time you would work independently. There are times as well that you'll be expected as well to solve problems on your own. So the top attributes that employers are looking for in terms of supply chain graduates is problem solver, adaptable learners, reliability and accountability, a team player, result-driven, result-orientated, and customer-focused. And this is a solid foundation of what makes a perfect graduate. Developing young professionals is a responsibility not only left to employers, but also left to the graduates themselves. I'm just going to play us a small clip that I found, which got me thinking as well, to say, very often we overlook some of the skills that we learn on our day-to-day lives. Supply chain is about the way of life. And very often we want to focus more on what it is that we learn in the textbook in terms of the school, without seeing that everything that we do when I go shopping, it's about supply chain. So I'm going to just play a little clip which got me thinking.
So you are 32 years old, and it seems
Great,
that you're
it's fine.
work experience. That is not possible.
Sir, in my village, we start working when we are 4 years old.
What were you doing when you were 4?
Everything what is mentioned in the CV.
I don't think a 4-year-old knows supply chain.
Sir, I was assisting my father in bringing hay for the sheep and cow.
And this is considered supply chain.
Yes, sir. Supply chain means what? Is to find out from where the raw materials are coming and in bringing the raw materials to the end source in the best and efficient way possible. So if I assisted my father in his travels to the farm to get all the hay and bring it all over and feed the sheep and cows, is it not considered as experience? Then I don't know what else would you consider. And is it not an advantage for a 4-year-old to start learning all these things rather than going to school and university and wasting their parents' money?
Hold on. So you lied on your CV because you told us you went to university.
I also went to University of Practical Learnings, which I think you never did.
Okay, so not only are you lying to me, but you're now also insulting me.
No, sir, I'm not insulting you. I'm gaslighting you.
Excuse me?
Exactly, sir.
Thank you for this video. Yeah, Ma'am Kanyezi, you can continue.
Please unmute, man.
Ah, there it is. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
Yes, we can hear
now.
you.
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you. Yes.
So what can graduates then do? It is important that graduates pursue internship and vocational work. While you are studying, please also, there you have very long vacations that you have in terms of university. And those are the times that you need to use that time very well. It doesn't help you that when university closes that you go sit at home for the whole 1 month that you are off. Find opportunities where you can get vocational work. Even the small tasks that you can undermine can also add in terms of your contribution of that work experience. Because remember, when you are now applying for a job, they will say 2 to 3 years of work experience. And the opportunity comes at that time when you are now on vocation. Join learnerships and graduate programs as well. It's very important that we encourage our students to join learnerships and graduate programs. Master Excel and Power BI. What is so nice now is that you can get exposure to these things while you're studying. Mastering Excel, you can now go on to ChatGPT to learn how to do Excel. The internet has got wealth of knowledge on the Power BI tools. And these are skills that are very critical that you can be self-taught. I mean, how I mastered Excel was self-taught through practical application and practice. Gain ERP exposure. Organizations like SAP now provide accreditation in terms of certification, which you can apply for without any experience, where you can apply for a certification for SAP, even for other systems as well that you can also apply. So gain the ERP exposure through the application of certification in terms of the various ERP system. Where all the above fails in terms of getting learnerships, volunteer on operational projects. You know, from that experience of volunteering, that also counts. And make sure that when you volunteer, teach the volunteer opportunity as if it's a job. And industry certification. You know, we now have organizations like SIPS, Apex, and we even now have our own organization now, which is AISCR, Advanced Institute of Supply Chain Research, which you can also get certification. All these webinars that you're attending, it also adds as part of an opportunity as well in terms of getting certification. Develop commercial awareness. The only way you can develop commercial awareness is to speak to people that are working. Find out from them what it is that is happening in the work environment. Get yourself exposed. Get yourself an intern. to have an understanding what happens in the world of supply chain when you're working, and what are the type of things that happen when I'm dealing in terms of putting together a budget, when I'm dealing in terms of putting together a sourcing plan, when I'm dealing to end-to-end supply chain. These are type of things that you need to also engage and also socialize with people that are working to get a better an understanding of and awareness of the work environment. Network intentionally. And this is very critical. You'll see nowadays in LinkedIn, they have a lot of opportunities for youngsters to learn from each other, of joining various clubs. I'm encouraging young students and graduates to get involved in various clubs and intentionally network, because these networks that you build are networks that in the future can guarantee you employment. Work adjacent roles. On this, make sure that you get multi-skilled in a lot of things. Do not focus on just one area. Expose yourself to multiple things, because this is what makes you agile, make you flexible and adaptable to change. Build a portfolio of supply chain projects. University provides a very fertile ground and opportunity for you to conduct research. Do not shy away from conducting research or participating in research or participating in other people's research. When I was a student, I used to always volunteer to do data analysis, to do a lot of work, participate in research of other academics that are studying in university. And this will give you a portfolio to say, I was part of the research 1, 2, 3, 4. And this will add into your portfolio in terms of your experience. How organization can develop young professionals is attract the right talent. We as organizations need to hire for potential and not just experience. I mean, where do we expect young people to get experience if we do not hire them? Strengthen the employer branding through campuses. I mean, we need to be visible in campuses on the things that we do. Invite youngsters to participate in internship. Involving young professionals in hiring panels. You know, as myself, it is very important where I often provide exposure to my junior employees in some of the interview panels, because I have subconscious bias when I'm interviewing, because I'm always looking for somebody like myself. And it's very good that you bring a fresh perspective to life and bring your youngsters to participate in terms of the interview panels, because they will see things that you may overlook because they understand what is out there. On board with purpose. Create a structure of onboarding that provides a journey. When I onboard, it is important that already I plan to develop a young person. Do not have an expectation that on day one, these youngsters that enter the workplace know exactly what is expected of them. Create a structured onboarding journey, taking them through the various processes. Introduce the bigger picture and the business impact. Assign them mentors as they enter the workplace. Build skills for the future. Do not focus on the skills now. Even as youngsters enter the workplace, you need to continuously develop them. Go through experience as well and stretch them, provide them with assignments, the way they need to work independently. Coach, mentor, and give feedback. Feedback is very important, because if you give somebody feedback, they know how well they are developing. Create a culture that keeps them, because you want to attract and retain people. So it's important that you foster a culture of trust, inclusion, and psychological safety. Very often when young people enter the workplace, they find that you have difficult managers that bully you, difficult managers that do not know how to deliver on instructions, that create an environment that is not psychologically safe. So work on building psychological safety for young people that are enter, because you want to keep them, you want to retain them. Communicate career path transparently. You know, when I enter the workplace, you need to already prepare IDP plans, individual development plans, in terms of how do you prepare your career path to the next level. Empower and recognize. give opportunities and ownership on certain projects. Recognize somebody when they do well, congratulate them when they do well. It is important that we provide clear direction, right skills, and great support when youngsters enter the environment. Just as a survey that was conducted by Deloitte is that the Gen-Z generation, what things that they value is learning and career growth, meaningful work with purpose, supporting leadership and feedback, and competitive compensation. Yes, at the end of the day, people are there for the money. And it's important that we also recognize that. Because once you develop somebody, also be aware that they are going to be get headhunted. Because those companies that are saying to you, we want people with for between 2 to 3 years experience will headhunt your own people. So I'm going to use an example of my own experience when I was a student. So this is now a case study of Nkanyezi, who is now 19 years old, working at Marcel's Frozen Yogurt. So I used to work at Marcel's Frozen Yogurt as a student. And one of the key things that I learned as working was on demand forecasting. Very often we had to anticipate how many people were going to be coming in terms of during the weekends, public holidays, and we needed to make sure that we had enough stock. So we had to do demand forecasting. So I'm giving you a practical example to say, when you are working, no matter how small the job, it is important. Teach each job with importance. I had to do daily inventory management. Daily operations required me to monitor the stock levels of the ice cream in the various flavors in terms of cones and all the stock that we had available to ensure that we had sufficient stock available when customers enter, when they need to buy the frozen yogurt. I had to also maintain supply relationships. We had multiple suppliers. We had suppliers that actually provided the frozen yogurt. We had suppliers that provided the cones and the cups that are utilized and the packaging. We had suppliers that provided the toppings and the syrup. So those were relationships that you needed to build in terms of, which is, again, supplier relationship management. Certain suppliers wanted, when you place orders, to pay on delivery. So you also required to also learn P2P, where you place an order and you also have deliveries. We also had to maintain and ensure that the frozen yogurt is kept cold and stored in a specific temperature. How it is transported under strict temperature control conditions. Customer service is always very key in terms of product availabilities, ensuring that you're meeting the customer's expectations. Certain customers wanted you to customize the ice cream in terms of the product. And critical, again, is waste management. So when I then put together my CV, I was not going to overlook my experience working behind the counter in an ice cream parlor. And this is the type of thing that I put in terms of my CV. While working as a student at Marcel's Frozen Yogurt, I gained practical experience in demand forecasting, inventory management, and procurement, and you know. And this additional regulation in terms of preparing the different flavors, it empowered me as well to gain sufficient experience in terms of customized flavors and combination, in terms of developing my own space, in terms of career of supply development, and also problem solving. So it is very important that when you do any job, no matter how small it is, use that experience and adapt it back to your development as a supply chain professional, and do not even overlook that small job. Try to ensure that you participate as well in any job experience that you have. It counts when you are looking for employment. From a university perspective, integrated work and integrate learning is very critical. Make sure that you incorporate case studies that are realistic, that simulate the real work environment, where you're applying theory in a practical business environment. What also becomes critical is the technical and digital literacy. Universities need to make sure that they expose students to all the various digital technologies that are now being adapted in terms of the workplace. Develop the soft skills in terms of communication, ensure that you get them to do teamwork, and also leadership and presentations. Presentations are very important. I mean, we present all the time when you're working in a supply chain environment. Industry collaboration and feedback is also very critical. So in essence, then, what it becomes when you're building sustainable partnership with universities in terms of industry, co-design the curriculum, work with industry to design the curriculum for the future of supply chain professionals, because it doesn't help if we work in isolation. The university will end up building students that we cannot use in the workplace environment. So it's very critical that we co-design curriculum. Partner with universities to have internships and projects to provide practical experience. Use your Nkanyezis of this world as guest lecturers and mentors for young students. And you know, I'm using myself as an example. Very often I do quite a number of guest lectures where I appear at universities to teach students on practical application in terms of supply chain. Collaborate with industry as university in terms of innovative project and knowledge creation. Start to build the talent pipeline initiatives, improve graduate employment outcomes, support academic staff to get exposure to the industry. You know, very often you find that lecturers teach, but they do not always have practical experience in terms of working in terms of the environment. But if you have industry and university partnership, we want to bring the lecturers to come and work in our environment to see what actually happens practically in terms of the supply chain. We find that it's a very big gap currently, because very often when a lecture at university, let me take it back. You come to university to study supply chain. Then once you graduate, you struggle to find employment. Then you get observed into the system where you continue studying, doing your honors, then your master's degree up to a PhD. But you do not have any workplace experience or exposure. But yet you wanting to train the future of people to work in an industry of supply chain. So it is very critical as well that as industry, we provide opportunities to also enable university staff to be exposed to our environment. And that was how do we then develop the next generation of supply chain professionals. We need to create industry advisory boards. Universities should establish in industry advisory boards where you have people that have worked in industries in different fields, irrespective what their academic qualifications are. You cannot buy experience. You cannot teach experience, but experience needs to happen of somebody who's worked in industry for a number of years for you to say, I'm an experienced individual and I'm an expert in my field. And this is why it is critical that when you do the advisory board, bring the people that have experience to first identify the needs, co-design solutions, implement together, measure and improve in terms of innovation, and look at sustainable scale in terms of development of the tech working together with industry. So in conclusion and key takeaways, we want to success is a combination of academic knowledge, practical experience, business challenges. We need to bridge industry. Partnerships and integration learning helps to align the market needs and improve employability of the students. Develop industry-ready talent. Structure programs and mentoring to accelerate the skills and prepare graduates to the complex global supply chain. Share strategic responsibility becomes very important and crucial in the participation on leading in innovation and participating in those projects. And this is my thank you.
Your name correctly.
It is Nkanyezi Lutuli. Nkanyezi Lutuli.
Nkanyezi. Okay, I'll practice on that. So thank you
All
so
right,
much
thank
for
you.
sharing your insights. I've also learned a lot from your presentation, and I'm sure the participants have also learned a lot. So we'll go on to our last presentation from Mr. Bello, who will also be sharing with us currently. Please slot in the questions towards the end of the webinar so that we can have good time in terms of the presentation, then end with the questions. Thank you. And over to you, Mr. Bello. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kanyezi, and thank you, Margaret. Thank you for everyone here today. My name is Ademola Jalil Bello, speaking from Nigeria. I am going to be speaking about leading the future, building high-performing procurement and supply chain leaders. Please confirm you can all see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen. Maybe you can put it in presentation mode.
Okay. Just a minute. Okay. Here we are. In the present day supply chain management, it is known that supply chain is now no longer a boardroom topic. Supply chain has become what helps and what builds the system of organizations. So, having said that, we will want to now look at what are the supply chain leadership challenges. In my research and my conclusion and view, it is noted that 60% of organizations now realize that supply chain leadership has an impact of about 60%. 60% of organizations, rather, report a leadership shortage in procurement and supply chain. This is a research conducted by McKinsey sometimes ago, and it has shown that we lack the talent, we lack the leadership personalities that should drive the present-day global supply chain. In a nutshell, that means supply chain today have a means of identifying strategic growth. Sorry, wait a minute, just a minute. Yeah, supply chain are no longer cost centers; they are strategic growth engines. We have realized by experience, for some of us that have been in the industry for some time, that it is not just about making profits or profitability, it's about building the system. And it also noted in supply chain leadership challenges that the current day disruptions, ESG, that is environmental, social, and governance issues, the present day AI and globalization have raised the stakes for supply chain leadership, which means, just like the last speaker said, we do not have to live in the past. We have to move with the current global technology drive. Like I said, the 60% of organizations report a leadership shortage in procurement and supply chain, which means there is a gap. Then the future, therefore, belongs to the organizations that can build leaders, not just fill roles. How do we achieve this? We now have to look at what distinguishes leaders from managers. In order to get the leadership challenge in supply chain proper, we need to identify that in current day business management, most organizations center their efforts on employing or producing managers, whereas the essence of leadership is actually to produce leaders. In my analysis here in this table, it is confirmed from management books and experience that while managers optimize processes, leaders, on the other part, redefine possibilities. A manager will manage risk, but a leader will have a clear view ahead of when the risk is going to be having a negative impact on the business. Leaders deliver KPIs that this is my KPI, my key performance indicators. That's what I've delivered. I've done my job. So a manager delivers KPIs rather, but a leader will build capability and will have vision. A leader will build people, will coach, and then will keep the downlines ready for the future of the business. While managers focus on today, leaders anticipate tomorrow. It's also noteworthy to realize that there are some leadership attributes that needs to be recognized in supply chain. A leader will challenge the process, ensuring that the process is not just what it used to be. What is the future of the business? That's how a supply chain leader needs to think. And it will also inspire a shared vision. That is, have the vision of the organization at heart, build structures that will ensure that this vision is achievable and is achieved. Leaders will also encourage the heart. A leader in supply chain, well, also will have to be applicable to other aspects of the business, will encourage people, motivate, and then ensure that each downline, each upcoming supply chain professional is motivated and is ready to do the needful at all times. A leader will also know how to delegate. If you have achieved professional acumen and professional strength, you cannot do it all at all times. Build people. In doing this, you will ensure it will ensure that you always have one minimum or two dips that can act in your stead. That is, when you are not there or when there are so much tasks to do, your downlines can also take responsibility. And the leader will also model the way. Modeling the way means you lead, you take the front. You must also understand the job, understand the process yourself. I will also look at a situation where, in my career, I've been able not only build people, I mentor. Mentorship means you identify people who are ready to learn, encourage them, support them. Don't just look at a way of knocking them all the time or at all times. Pat them and let them know when they are doing things right. Moving on to the next slide. These are the 4 shifts every supply chain leader must make. And I want to tell you, this is what business leaders, business owners look out for in checking or checkmating the performance of every supply chain leader. Supply chain has now moved from just being a cost center, like I said. We now have to drive value. What have we achieved in numbers, not just in work, not just on the surface of it? You have to drive margin. Are we actually delivering competitive advantage? Are we making profit? What can we do to ensure that what we did yesterday or the last quarter that did not give us 100% of our KPI, what are we going to do, the innovation we're going to introduce to make it achievable? And it also has to be sustainable. From silos to ecosystem, you do not work alone in supply chain leadership. You need to work as a team member. You have to extend your leadership drive to the suppliers, the tech partners, and also the customers. This is going to ensure that businesses do not just sit in one place. The business will evolve into the global space and then be able to drive the vision of the business owners. The supply chain leadership is also measured from not being reactive, but also to be predictive. This is now taking us to the use of data. AI is now the talk of the day. Power BI is also a knowledge that should be mastered by every supply chain professional upcoming, and also those of us that have spent some time. And we also need to look at what has worked, which has been documented. Business process systems must be put in place. Documentation in terms of ensuring that flowcharts are going to be existing within a business. Work instructions must be adopted within the business, well clearly led by HR and the HODs. And also, we need to also understand that in measuring what supply chain leaders do today, which is going to be a function of whether we are performing or not, we need to move from just being transactional, right, to building talent. You don't just work because you want to work for your pay alone. You want to work and leave people that can carry on what you have done in the future. You have to invest in people, which are the core assets of the business. This takes us to what I do most of the time in anywhere I work. I organize classes as like knowledge sharing sessions, which is on a weekly basis. Every team member picks a particular work instruction or a topic and use that to coach those of other team members in a session just like an hour or two. And it is going to be it has always worked for the teams I work with, and it's also a means of sharing knowledge and ensuring that supply chain knowledge is carried into the future. How do organizations build resilient leadership pipelines? There's a three-part framework to achieve this. The essence of this is to ensure that you treat your pipeline like your inventory. You forecast, do we have experts in the supply chain team? We are talking of supply chain is encompassing warehousing and inventory, encompassing the procurement team, encompassing the distribution team. Do we have clear-cut experts in these pillars of supply chain? If no, we need to bring them in. That takes the supply chain leader in a clear-cut discussion with the HR and also getting the business to note that professionalism and expertise is important. We have to identify early whether supply chain leadership is in place. You use assessments and performance management systems, performance metrics, not just I've spent 20 years in the business, this is how we used to do it yesterday. We need to know, are you actually working with the business goals? And when that is done, you accelerate growth. Cross-functional rotations, stretch assignments, and global exposure. This is training, coaching, and people development. It's important. And that ensures that the talent is well developed and it is also sustained. You institutionalize through a formal succession plan, mentorship, leadership competencies as embedded in HR policies. There should be, like I said earlier, a deep DIP that can stand in your place when you are not there. That it's also important for supply chain leaders to note that there should be a means of delegating authority at all times, not just do it alone, because that coaches the downlines, it coaches the upcoming professionals, and also gives you a clear rest of mind to ensure that the business can continue even when you are on leave. The business is sustainable even when you are on training. Leadership competencies that will matter in the next 10 years or thereabouts are this is how to build future-proof leaders in supply chain. Digital fluency, we have talked about this. You need to master AI. You need to ensure that what you do must be technologically correct. Business analytics has with so many tools. ERP tools have gone so much automated and diversified. Any supply chain professional or leader that does not have the knowledge of ERPs is not in this present world. We need to know technological innovations and automation. Supply chain leaders in the next 10 years, even next 5 years, must be able to negotiate, communicate, and live without authority. Not just knock people. You need to communicate with your team and ensure that they really know how to achieve what the business drives that. Resilience and change leadership. You need to navigate volatility and lead through ambiguity. A leader in supply chain, like I said, must have a very open mind, must be ready to adopt to new changes, and must be able to implement and sustain those changes. Also takes us to environmental, social, and governance acumen, where CSRs now ensure that businesses are very adaptable to societies and communities. We need not to work in a situation where current day practice in supply chain is green procurement, wherein you work only through the system, just hard copies and working with paperwork is no longer the in vogue. So a supply chain leader must know what we call green procurement, must know how to use the system to generate POs, must also know how to communicate and sustain these ESG systems at when due. We also need to learn people-first leadership. We have mentioned this, you coach, inclusion, and psychological safety. When the team have the assurance that their job is sustained and they have the right knowledge, they go beyond expectation to deliver their responsibilities. In summary, technical skills get you in, these skills get you to the C-suite. Where you are not technically or technologically sound, you may not adopt or adapt to the current supply chain leadership drive in the next 10 years. Building the pipeline, the tactics that work. What high-performing organizations do differently? Career pathing. Managers should, or leaders should learn how to build a career path for the team. A team member that is just coming into the business as just, for instance, in a warehouse, a storeman. That storeman must have a dream of becoming the chief procurement officer one day, or becoming the director of supply chain one day. How do we achieve this? Training, academic knowledge, and also influencing and knowledge sharing. Teach to lead programs. You pair people. When I joined a business some time ago, there's this body system, BUDDY, that was adopted. That was attached to someone that is already within the system, that's already in the line of work that I want to do. And this person makes it easy for me to quickly plug in to the business. This is what we need to do in present day leadership in supply chain. Create body system, create partnerships that work within the business. Then the future of supply chain relies on professionalism. It is no-brainer to say that a leader or a supply chain professional who does not go all out to get certifications will plug into the future supply, future professional recognition in the industry. You need to join industry forums like this, join professional associations like the Advanced Institute for Supply Chain Research. We have many of them there, like SIPS, like IPSCMI, and a host of others within the industry that can work. These certifications help develop the team members and help them grow within the pipeline. There's also be a failure-friendly culture that you allow stretch roles with support, not punishment. Like I said, knowledge sharing sessions, coaching, development of people, the body system will help in developing future leaders of supply chain. Then we also have to be data-driven. Talent reviews. There should be data-driven talent reviews. Talent reviews can be as quick as weekly, which can just be within a team leader and the associate or the downline on email. Check what the team member has done, document it, and give reviews and feedback. The talent reviews could also be quarterly, and most organizations nowadays do annual performance reviews that speaks to what is expected of the team member and what has been achieved and the gaps. But because there will be periodic reviews, you do not wait for the team member to fail before you give review feedback and room for training and development. How to retain and grow top talent. People don't leave companies, they leave lack of growth. And this takes us to the retain formula. The retain formula identifies that recognition is important within a business. That is the R part of the formula. You celebrate victories, identify when a team member has achieved some goals. HR in some companies give documented feedback on letters, on notice boards. Identify the team member for what he or she has been doing or has done well. Then exposure, board, customers, and cross-region projects. Allow team members to work within the business round. That is, gaining experience from different departments will also ensure that you can retain a team member, because that person will know that he is useful, not just in his department. That is also, it's also done well by HR team when they allow internal vacancies and internally advertised roles for the teams, for employees to apply and get new jobs within the business. Adaptation of technology. Tools must be provided, systems, communication tools, and must just be provided for team members or the supply chain professionals to work well. ERP trainings, and then configuration of what the ERP does, and how to ensure that each team member builds and aligns with current modern day technology is important. When these trainings are given, a team member will want to deliver and also surpass expectations. There should be autonomy to trust them to make decisions. That is, you delegate. You do not just keep on. A manager or a good leader do not just continue to do the task himself. You must let your team downlines have autonomy to deliver. You invest in people, you coach them, you sponsor them on trainings, and then when they do that, they will also be useful in giving back to the business. Always show what is next in 12 to 18 months. There should be a target, a goal for any team member within a business. When a supply chain a professional knows where he's supposed to be, as in terms of KPIs and in terms of job goals, the person, he or she, will have a drive to achieve those things. And while working on that project, will be retained within the business. I have discussed this, but let me just go on over it again. It has been identified that 80% internally fill rate for senior managers plus C-suite roles gives us 25% reduction in regretted attrition. That is, if a business goes directly in ensuring leadership is put right, if the top hierarchy is right, that is, filling C-suite is done well, there is tendency that these C-suite members who are well trained will bring in team members that can stay within the business, and the attrition that is exiting the company will be grossly reduced to less than 25% within the business. We also need to know that present day business, future leaders lab with monthly disruption simulations is also an example of training, knowledge sharing that I have mentioned. Let people that know train or teach those that do not know. It ensures that we get it right within the business and the supply chain in particular. Rotating high potential through procurement, logistics, and supplier risks. I mentioned this earlier, but just a repeat, to ensure that people do not just know what they have on their job description. They should also know what other customers and suppliers do within the business. Leading the future starts today. We need to audit our pipelines. We must have a true deep coverage for critical roles, just has been mentioned. We must invest in 3 competencies: digital competence, influencing, and sustainability. Make talent a KPI for every supply chain leader. Present day businesses also include that aspect of the HR KPI in the supply chain leaders KPI. That is employability of their staff, the talent within the business. The level of attrition that takes place within the supply chain business must be one of the KPIs of a leader. When that is done, managers keep the lights on. Leaders build the grid for the next generation. Leadership, like I said, is the goal of businesses, not just building managers. And that is where takes us to the end of my presentation. Thank you.